So we're live now. I'll ask Chair to start the meeting whenever she's ready.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee at Oxfordshire County Council on Wednesday, the 15th of July. We are starting a couple of minutes late, and I apologise for that, but I wanted to make sure that we were quorate before we started. My name is Councillor Ros Smith. The Deputy Chair, Councillor John Shirry, I don't think will be with us this afternoon. I won't ask councillors to introduce themselves, but perhaps mention their name when they first speak, so we know they recorded as to who has spoken. And officers, just if you could introduce your name when you first speak as well, that would be helpful for our audience. Right. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence and temporary appointments. Jack, please.
Thank you. I've received apologies for absence from Councillor Malik, who's represented today by Councillor Henwood, and also, unfortunately, from our two co-optees, Kate Cartwright and Paul McGinn.
Yeah.
Kate Cartwright, as you will know, has circulated questions in advance, and Paul McGinn may yet join us online later on, but that's unclear.
Thank you. I believe John Shirry might be joining or certainly listening online, but isn't able to join us in person this afternoon. So we can accept his apologies as well, please.
Thank you. That's noted.
Thank you very much. I think all the other members are here this afternoon. Are there any declarations of interest at all this afternoon, members? Oh, isn't it? Right, thank you. Then if we could turn to the minutes, which are on pages 9 to 16. From our meeting held on Wednesday, the 20th of May this year. I'll page them. If there are any points that people want to raise or comments to make or changes, please let me know and give the page number. Page 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. No, I don't think there are any items or items of action. So are members happy for me to sign those as the correct record? Thank you. I will do so later on this afternoon. Thank you. Agenda item number 4, petitions and public address. I don't think we have any. Is that correct this afternoon?
That's right.
Thank you. Right. So could we then please change to agenda item 5, Treasury Management Outturn Report 25-26. I'm starting on page 17 and over to 30. Please introduce yourself, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Tim Chappell, Strategic Finance and Investment Manager. So this report is the annual performance report for Treasury Management for the year 25-26, prepared in accordance with the SIPFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management. It's the fourth and final report for the year, and it outlines the Council's borrowing, investments and cash flow activities at the 31st of March 2026. All the performance is measured against the strategy that was written and agreed in Council in February 2025. Firstly, importantly, I can confirm that we operated within our prudential indicators for the year and there were no breaches of policy or strategy. Regarding borrowing, the Council maintained a cautious approach to borrowing. We repaid £7 million of debt during the year, 2 million of which was naturally maturing Public Works Loans Board debt, and we took the option to repay £5 million worth of LOBO loans when the lender exercised their option to change the interest rate. We didn't take any new borrowing through the year. That took our total debt position to 265 million at year end. We did consider issuing another green bond during the year, but the macroeconomic environment meant that it wasn't in the financial best interest of the Council to do so. On the investment side of things, the Council achieved strong returns. So in-house interest on balances generated £18 million on balances of 407 million. That exceeded the budgeted figure by 7.6 million. On external pooled funds, they performed well as well, producing £4.4 million worth of dividends compared to a budget of 3.8, and that brought total investment income to 22.5 million. The value of pooled funds stood up well at year end as well. They were totaling 89.1 million, and that was against purchase price of 88 million. There is still some volatility on there given global economic events, but they are performing well. And that brought the council's total investment portfolio at the end of the year to 423.9 million, and that was a diversified mix of fixed term deposits with other local authorities, money market fund deposits, mainly for cash flow, and pooled fund investments.
Thank you very much for that quick run through. Members, do you have any comments or questions you'd like to ask this afternoon? Oh, yes, we do. David, please.
Oh, yes, thank you. David Dingley, Adwood Oxford Body Cop Division. You mentioned there in that helpful summary about paying off a loan early because the interest rates became more favourable. I just wondered if there were any similar opportunities that might arise in the near future.
So with the Lobo loan, it's a very low interest rate on the original Lobo loan, 3.68%, but the lender at agreed periodic times has the right to change that interest rate. They were proposing they were going to change it to 6.17%, which we opted not to pay, so we decided to repay that early. We are expecting more Lobos to be called this year, and we will probably take the opportunity to repay them. We do look at debt refinancing opportunities for the Public Works Loans Board. Now, they're all fixed loans with fixed maturity dates, and we would either have to pay a premium or receive a discount on repaying it. And we need to balance that against the risk of having to go out and borrow again in a couple of years' time. The forecast for PWLB borrowing over the medium term is going to be higher than the current debt we have. So whilst we might receive a short-term discount, it's likely to be not the best long-term decision for the council. But I do monitor those opportunities regularly.
I think it also is useful, actually, if you read the report that went to Cabinet in June 2026, so last month, in fact, actually, as mentioned, actually, in paragraph 26, under the financial implications of Treasury management. So it's useful to read that Cabinet report too. Thank you for mentioning the green bond that we would have liked to have seen issued and explaining why that wasn't going to be the case this year. I do hope that it gets less volatile around the world. I think we all do. And the opportunity to issue another green bond would be good. So how quickly could you make that decision, your team, to actually issue another green bond?
So the position that the officers between my team and the what they're called zero carbon team, where it's I can't remember the name. Yeah. So we've agreed that we're going to remain in a state of readiness. So they're going to keep a list of investable or shovel-ready schemes that fit the criteria for a green bond, and we'll be able to issue within a 3-month period because there's issue dates once a quarter. So when rates become more favourable again, we'll be able to move quickly.
So it's once a quarter, right? Okay, that's good news. Thank you. We should note that, I think. Right. I think Councillor Fry had his hand up for a question.
Thank you very much, Chair. I sent a few questions ahead of time to Cathy Wilcox, who's not present, but I think she's copied it, some of the officers. I'm just going to say one of them has already been raised by Councillor Hingley about Lobo versus PWLB, but there was another one I raised which is about the lending list on page 19, and I asked whether any loans were made to authorities with a section 114 notice being in what I call special measures. Apparently the council does not give loans to such authorities. But I also asked a question about, there are in the list, I think, 6 loans made to 5 councils that have made exceptional requests for financial support following the fair funding review. And I wondered whether in return for that, since they're probably higher risk, do we receive a slightly higher return on those particular loans? And the answer is we may receive a slightly higher interest rate as a result of other councils not lending to them purely from a reputational perspective, because I was just looking at the long list in the counterparties. But I just thought I would inform the committee. Thank you.
Thank you for putting your questions and then giving the answers as well this afternoon. Yes, Jack.
I'll just clarify for the record that Cathy Wilcox is in. She'll be joining for item 10, given that Lorna Baxter's present for this item. Thanks.
Lorna, did you want to add anything else to that question and answer session that James Fry has just had?
It sounds like he had a quite a thorough response from Cathy, so I don't think I need to add anything. Unless
Just to add that from a credit perspective, there's no difference between any precepting authority in England and Wales as part of the 2003 Local Government Act. Any money that we lend to them is secured against the tax raising powers in that area. So if they did default for whatever reason, it's never happened in local government treasury management, we could raise precepts in that area. That would be the nuclear option, but it's and that's in primary legislation. So there's no difference in the credit quality. It's merely, as you stated, reputational risk that some councils don't like.
Thank you for that explanation. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on the Treasury Outturn report? Yes, Councillor Rory.
Yes, really to say it's a very good result, and obviously the extra income that we've enjoyed has bailed us out for some of the other cost pressures that we've been suffering. So good result.
Totally agree with that, Councillor Rawlings. The recommendation is for the Audit and Governance Committee to recommend and to note the Council's Treasury Management activity and outcomes in 25-26. I think we should also record actually to thanks both to Tim Chappell and his team as well for the excellent results that we've got on the investments. It's very pleasing to see when you see, as Councillor Fry has already mentioned, other councils with the Section 1 getting into problems financially as so. But thank you. Please accept our thanks and put that onto the team. Thank you. Right, that concludes agenda item 5. We'll move now to agenda item 6, which is the report by the Executive Director of Resources and Section 151 officer. Which officer is going to take us through this? Is it going to be Ella? Thank you.
Yeah, so our statement of accounts was released on the 30th of June. So that is the massive document underneath. That also includes our local government pension fund accounts as well, and our firefighters pension fund and trust funds. Also, so the public inspection notice for that, so that is where residents can look and comment. That runs from the 1st of July to the 12th of August. Currently, no one has commented. So at this current point in time, we don't normally expect anything, but it is nice if someone does. Other than that, there isn't too much. Obviously, we're still in line. Simon will probably bring in later, but we're still in line with meeting the backstop dates, which is the 31st of January, for the audit to be complete. And the audit does start next week. And they already have done an interim audit, but I'm sure Simon will say. So, but yeah.
Verbal update from EY from Simon, so that would be useful. Right, this is a lot of paper to read. Statement of accounts, it always is every year. But I think the way it's laid out and the way it's written is very clear for members to understand. So I'd like to record my thanks to Ella and the team. It really is great to see. Thank you very much indeed. An awful lot of information in here. It's one of the documents I tend to keep actually from year to year, a hard copy of, because it is actually useful to look back and see how money has been spent and what our assets are and what has happened financially during the year as well too, because it is a good record. Councillor Fry, I see you first with a question. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. First, correction I raised. If you look at page 37, we have 2 RAG rows. Apparently the top one is the latest financial year, and the one beneath is 2004-2005.
I'm sorry, Councillor Fry, just to interrupt you. I'm looking at page 37, no, page
37. It is in my pack.
Oh, Right, page 4. Thank
It's
you.
page 4 in the narrative report, yeah.
Let me think if I can find it. Thank you.
And so one is, the lower one is the previous year. And the top one is the latest year.
Right, okay.
Okay.
And the question, sorry.
And then the question, at least still raise the question, if you go and look at the capital investment, I think you, Chair, would be familiar with the notion of optimism bias, that capital spending is not always achieved within the budget year.
That's
And
correct.
it looks to me as if there is less than I know for the city, but it still applies to the county. I just wonder, is there any attempt systematically to allow for optimism bias in the achievement of capital investment plans? That's my question.
It is indeed, I believe actually, I think the budget allowed some extra money to release capital spend, but I'm sure Lorna can give a fuller answer for that.
So I think that the reference is to potentially to the fact that programmes slip and take a while to deliver. So that is something that we have considered. We have, I think, for the 25-26 capital programme, we did put in a risk-adjusted spend, particularly given the significant scale of the HIF schemes and the impact that that has in terms of slippage. But the where we'd want to move to is to be very much clearer about realistic delivery. Obviously, we're not there yet, but obviously that's something that not just this organisation suffers from in terms of ability to be clear about programming, but others do too. But it is something we're aware of and we need to improve on.
To say it's a bit difficult to compare, I think, statement of accounts for a county council to a city district council as well. The two are so different, given the amount of services that the county council delivers to the people of Oxfordshire. So it's a little bit difficult to compare those two. Right, are there any other questions or comments that anyone would like to make, or anything else that Lorna or Ella would like to add to the statement of accounts, including the pension? And no, oh yes, Councillor Rawlings, please do. Councillor Rawlings, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. There we go, there we go. Thank you.
And now it's super loud. Yeah, so our closing county fund is 34 million, and we have, I think, 135 of high needs deficit by the end there, which we're hoping to recover 90% of, and we've got, I think, is it 40? We've got a reserve against that situation. It's just drawing all of that out. There's a lot of presumption on the 90% recovery.
Yes, that is correct. And the SEND reform plan has been submitted, and the expectation is that that will be approved along with many other councils, and we will expect to hear later in the autumn about the approval of that plan and receipt of the high need recovery grant.
Thank you. Right, now the public inspection period runs, as you've said, Ella, from the 1st of July to the 12th of August, and so far we've had no comments as such. This is the committee's asked to consider and approve the draft statement of accounts. Do you anticipate, if there will be any comments, do you anticipating having to change anything too much?
Obviously, the RAG rating's already been changed, picked up the next day. And I think it's more probably what would come out of the audit. So we would see through there from EY. Yeah.
Right, okay. I wonder if Simon will say anything at all. Didn't just started it, probably not actually. Yeah, okay, thank you. So then will we get the not so draft statement of accounts at a later date then?
Yes, so the final statement of accounts, we're at this current point in time hoping for November, but that is obviously the backstop is the 31st of January, so it's down to sort of us us on resource and then Simon on resource on can we get the audit done completely.
Right.
However, I do know we're in good stead for that, so I'm hoping that we should be in the right place for that. So I'm expecting by the end of the year, that's sort of what EY have said, and I'm sure Simon will say again.
Okay.
But that's kind of where we're looking at.
I think you did an amazing job actually to get it all in as well on the time and so forth. It is a tremendous amount of work, as I've said. I think we're very grateful for you getting it done as well. And I think the only other thing that we will look to as well is when we come to LGR and knowing the outcome of Secretary of State, hopefully this week, I'm told possibly tomorrow. It will show that we are in a very good position as the County Council. Members, I attended the Southeast Forum for Audit and Governance Chairs on last Tuesday afternoon, so just over a week ago. And it was interesting. But I'm very pleasing actually to really discover that Oxfordshire County Council is certainly, I'm going to say, ahead of the game, I think. I'm confident about where we'll be, so that we'll be able to have reassurance actually of the finances for the County Council area. Right, so we have Councillor Fry with a question.
Well, within the same agenda item, jumping to the pension, and I've got on page 155 in the report pack, they refer and they give details on page 160 to the 3 large Brunel funds that and we know that there is the Brunel Pension Partnership. And I just wondered, are these 3 Brunel funds owned and managed by the partnership? Are they market traded funds? What's the significance of the common name Brunel?
Lorna, are you able to answer that one?
So the funds were held on behalf of Brunel rather than Brunel themselves. Brunel obviously from April 26th, all of the assets have been transferred to Central. So they would have been held in the pooled funds that Brunel held, but they weren't in individual assets that Brunel held. They were other people's assets, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, and thank you, Lorna Baxter, for the answer. Right. So the committee is recommended to consider and approve the draft statement of accounts, and we'll see the final copy later this year in November, hopefully. Are committee members content to accept that recommendation? Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we'll then move on. That concludes agenda item 6. We can turn a whole load of paper over now to agenda item 7, which is the counter floor plan and update. And we are joined by Declan Brolly. Thank you, Declan, for joining us this afternoon. Would you like to introduce the item, Sarah? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'll give a quick introduction to the paper, and then we also need to pick up that Kate Cartwright has asked 2 questions against that paper. So if I do that afterwards, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, so this is the report that sort of presents the overview of the activity from last year, the 25-26 counter floor plan, and then also the plan for the year ahead, 26-27. You'll note at the beginning of the report that we still structure our activity around the 5 pillars of local government fraud and corruption strategy. That's really, we found that quite useful to really structure our resources between the proactive and the reactive work, making sure we get that balance and making sure we have enough time to spend on the sort of the prevent and pursue agenda. In terms of resources, you'll see that we've had a vacancy for several months, but we've successfully recruited to that, and our new starter will be with us next week. So we're very excited about that. That's a senior fraud prevention officer, comes with a lot of investigation experience, but also at interview stage showed lots of skills and determination to, like I say, do not just the investigative casework, but the work that's needed around prevention.
I'll draw your attention to the annexes because they're sort of the key bits that build up the report. So Annex 1, I did put that in the March committee update. So this is just a sort of a slightly more up-to-date report back on the fact that we actually delivered the 25-26 plan. I'm quite happy with the work that the team delivered. Annex 2 gives you a bit more detail, a bit more flesh on that. So that gives where we have concluded on investigations, because of course some of these, as you're aware, go on longer than the financial year. But where we have completed and closed them, I can give you the outcomes, and that's within that activity report in Annex 2. So you've got the case figures, the amounts we've recovered, the sanctions that we've pursued and applied. And I think actually in terms of the criminal and civil prosecutions, thanks to the work of Declan and the team, that's been very, very successful. We're demonstrating strong investigative capability, and really the work with the police has really brought a lot of that on now, and how we're working with both legal and the police on cases. I do want to highlight though that the figures recovered is just part of that value. So I keep talking about, pursue, prevent and everything. What you don't want is a counter fraud team that reports really high values of fraud and recoveries and is focused on that, because actually if we've got that, we've got a problem with the internal control environment. So for me, in that linkage with internal audit is what's working and what's making the team really successful. It's about reducing that overall exposure to fraud and error. And when we do have losses and we do have issues, we make sure that the control environment's improved. That's not always tangible to put in an activity report. So hopefully it does give you a flavour of the activity that we've been working on. The report does note we've got 5 cases open still with Thames Valley Police, and they're the ones that are complex, and I can't in a public meeting at the minute give you any more details. As soon as they're concluded, I will do. I'll bring it back to you, and the work that we've done around that. These involve multiple employment cases, financial abuse, cases misuse of direct payments. So that's the type of that work is on the desk at the moment. And then in Annex 3, I've got the counter fraud plan for the year ahead. Similar to the discussions we had at the May Audit Committee on the internal audit plan though, that's got to be really flexible and responsive to the year and the next year that we've got ahead. So leading up to whatever decision, which is obviously going to be known sooner, hopefully, rather than later. But when we know the decision, we're obviously going to have to really adapt the counter fraud plan as well as the internal audit plan, provide assurance on the now, make sure there's not the gaps, but then also starting to build up for sort of the next stage in reorganisation. Moving back from the annexes, page 25 onwards is my final update on the NFA exercise. You've seen a lot of those figures throughout the year as we report them. We're about to enter into the next exercise, so it soon comes around again. We do a big data upload in the autumn, and by February, the Cabinet Office should release the results to us. And then page 28, we've also got some cases to note, which again is around sort of the deprivation of assets cases that we've been following up on. So I think that's it for me in terms of the introduction to my paper. Do you want to do Kate's questions first or let the members in the room?
Sorry, microphone was not on. I think we ought to do Kate's questions if we could first.
Okay, so the first one, I don't know whether Anita would be picking up on Kate's question, and that was around, she asked, I don't know if you've got the questions.
May I read it out?
Yeah, we can read out each question.
I haven't printed a copy for chair, so I'll read it. So these were received earlier this week. Item 7, it would be good to understand the logic behind the decision to have the counter fraud team take on the receipt, log and triage of whistleblowing referrals for Oxfordshire County Council. Whistleblowing seems to be much wider. So if you were talking about there being a skill shortage in the fraud profession space, which you are trying to rectify, do you foresee this arrangement being long-standing, please?
Anita Bradley, please.
Thank you, Chair. In response to that, it's important, very important for the council as a whole to have a single point of contact for whistleblowing, whilst within the policy there will be other contacts. Once a contact is made, then it needs to come into the whistleblowing central point, so that we know as an organisation what we've got. And actually between myself, who has responsibility for the whistleblowing policy, and the counter fraud team, we've worked really hard to make sure that we have that early awareness. In terms of what it brings that concept of independence of the organisation as a whole. So whilst there are workload concerns, they would be the same across any part of the council that you chose to do that. There had been confusion in the past where HR had a role, but then they got very confused with the grievance complaints, and so the whistleblowing element was in danger of being overlooked. So from a professional point of view, I respect the question, but I think our judgment has been that it works very well, and it has actually improved the way that we report on and manage the requests that we've got in and the complaints.
Sorry, do you want to do the next question, Jack, please?
Thank you. I'll minute that accordingly. Secondly, in relation to point 19, Kate asks, is there a good practice forum that this approach can be shared in, please?
Okay. So I think Kate's referring to how we quantify the losses and the future recoveries. And there is no public sector standard, and that's why she's raised it. So it's a very, very valid question. I'm aware that other council fraud and internal audit activities value the savings more than our 12-month period. You know, some people do that. We think it's a pragmatic amount that we're applying, and we think it's probably one of the most common from some of the networks. She asked what networks we discuss it at, but do you just want to come in there, Jack, because it's been recently discussed?
At a recent sort of fraud conference we were at, but organised by Central Government's Cabinet Office, we attended a session on, you know, how organisations do try and put a figure on the future losses prevented, because it's so useful. But you've got to be careful, you know, the methodology you apply, and we are applying the methodology that the Central Government NHS Counter Fraud Authority applies. So we're in good company. I think, you know, we have to record it. It's a very valid recording, but we've got confidence that we're not over recording, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Declan. Any further explanations? Any questions? Sorry, Councillor Ron Batson, please.
Yes, just a quick comment. I think paragraph 14, you just talk about, I think you should say the senior fraud prevention officer, not the senior counter fraud prevention officer. It sort of seems to be contradictory.
Yes, that's correct. It should be senior fraud prevention officer.
And just to confirm,
and the reason for that error was that we renamed it, and I've obviously merged the old with the new. So I apologise for that. That's definitely a Sarah merge that's gone wrong. So yeah.
And we have appointed that person now, you said.
Yes, they're starting next week. So.
That's good.
Yes, very good.
It certainly is good news to have somebody new into that team that are doing that sterling work, definitely. Are there any other questions or comments? Councillor Rawlings, please.
It's a very good report and good achievement. I just have one small query on page 242. We say that we've cancelled 640 blue badges at a saving of 562 grand and 1479 travel passes at a saving of 56,000. But the blue badges seem to be being valued at approaching £1,000 each. And I'm just trying to say, from the perspective of the council, is that actually saving us that money? I mean, it's fair to put a value on it, but it doesn't seem that we can bank it, does it?
It's an extremely valid point, and one that's much debated by officers across every county council network that we know. It's the Cabinet Office figures that are released to us and it's on and they're the figures and the methodology we have to apply. So what I focus on is not on the amounts that are attributed, but the amounts actually that we're taking out of circulation that shouldn't be in circulation, using the data as well to look at the hotspots to direct our sort of more proactive activity, all of that sort of thing. So and I cannot begin to give you a full explanation on how it's derived. Do you want to? Yeah, Declan might be able to answer.
I'll try. Unlike the previous conversation where we said there is no national recognised framework for future loss prevented, on the blue badges and the concessionary travel passes, there is. So the one thing we can definitely say is every council in the UK reports these figures in exactly the same way. So it's at least we've got that. Yeah, and they've based it. We did ask how they've based it, and it's basically been done. They try to estimate, and again, it might be swayed if you look at some other London boroughs, but it's supposed to take into account loss of parking revenue, loss of congestion zone charge revenue, and then they sort of extrapolate it and apply it across the board and try and then make it fit every LA, and that's the figures they came up with.
Hot madness, sorry. Councillor McCoffin.
Surely the key here is that it actually gives everybody something to compare across the UK with, and that's got to be a good thing. I think that there's probably an element of lifetime pay as well, or cost. So it's not just a one-off. So I would suspect that was the case from my time in APSS when I was working there.
Thank you. I think we have quite a high number of blue badges too in Oxfordshire, don't we? Sort of compared to some counties. I thought, yeah, I think that's something else that we need to know. Right. Thank you very much. I can't see any more hands or questions or comments to make. Again, I'd like to thank you for an excellent report, and it's always good to hear, particularly about the fraud prevention. I think that's important. As you said, that is much more difficult to quantify, and I think you're right, actually, in your comment there, Sarah Cox, that councils that triumphantly say we've saved, 5 million or whatever. Well, that's worrying in a way, because it sounds like they do have a problem. As such, they've not done as much prevention as could be done. Do you think the national fraud NFP plan is helpful to councils as well? Is that? Yeah.
I think we're quite a supporter of it, aren't we?
Yes.
We've got some cases that are ongoing that we would, without that data, we would not identify. So I think there's ways that nationally there's a lot more that could be done with that. And there's lots more opportunities, as there always will be for data. But in terms of core data sets, for one, some of the work that it does is not just about identifying those cases, but it also gives us some assurance. So we're able to say to our Section 151 officer that actually there's been very limited matches here, and actually it demonstrates that controls are working internally. So as well as helping us to identify cases for investigation, it's also given us some positive assurance, particularly around payments and things. So it's been going a long time. It's a big amount of work, but we do that on a risk-based approach, so we can proportionally fit it in. But it's quite interesting, some of our cases for the police now, some of the more complex ones have led from that.
Thank you for that. I mean, I suppose one of the big things that's been exposed, I think, recently and nationally was the trade in vapes and so forth, and companies setting up to sell them, not paying business rates, not paying rent as such, and then closing down suddenly or being moved on. And I don't know how much our trading standards links with our fraud team, but I would have hoped that was something that does happen.
Our work with trading, I mean, the trading standards are very focused on what's happening out there in the community, and what we're trying to protect is obviously the council's money, effectively. We have got good working relationships with trading standards. They're partly helped by the fact that Declan was a trading standards officer, and we brought him over to the good side of counter fraud. But that, you know, when that happens, and you know, development opportunities happen for staff within the council, it really does help keep teams working well together. So good relationships, but their focus is obviously a different one to ours.
Certainly enriches the fraud, anti-fraud team too. So thank you. Thank you for your work as well too. Right, the committee is recommended to note the annual summary of counter fraud activity for 25-26 and to approve the counter fraud plan for 26-27. Nobody has mentioned that this afternoon yet. Can we just look at it just very quickly on pages 256 to 257? Is there any comments or questions from committee members, please, on that plan for the forthcoming year? I guess if there was something national, local that came up, it could change as such, and the committee members will be informed of that change, would they?
Yeah, just like the audit plan. Any changes to the counter fraud plan, I'd bring back in the updates.
Right, that's fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. That concludes that agenda items. That's agenda item 7. We then move to agenda item 8. Another report from Lorna Baxter, Deputy Chief Executive and Section 151 Officer. But I think we have somebody else that's joined us as well too. This is the risk management, of course, risk management overview as well too. And I know that there are some changes actually as well on page 263 to note. Right. And this is with Louise Justian. So Louise, do you want to sorry, have I missed something? Oh, yes, I do apologise. Did we approve the counter fraud plan? Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, we did, I think. Thank you. And it's noted. Thank you, Nick. Right. Sorry, over to Louise, please, now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for inviting me along today. Thank you, Jack. This is the risk update, strategic risk overview update. And for those of you that follow the business management monitoring report, the strategic risk element sits within that report as well. But within this report, this talks about what else is going on in the council from a performance and insight team perspective, what we're doing across the organisation in continuing upskilling, consistency of approach to our risk management, whether that's operational and or strategic. So lots of work happening in the background to enable this report to land in front of you today. So lots has been happening not only at that strategic level, but also at operational. So the system that we use currently here at Oxfordshire County Council is CAMS Risk Connect. That captures now the strategic risks for the organisation, but also those operational risks. So we're able to have a look across the organisation, work with heads of service and teams about anything that is causing concern or possible escalation to that strategic risk register. So having it at that central point is proving very useful for not only us as a team, but also for heads of service. I'll move swiftly on. There was, Chair mentioned an amendment at table 40, the strategic risk table. That should actually state 31st of March 2026 at the top, not the December date. I have got some updates around what you'll be seeing in the next report with regards to strategic risks, and also a couple of updates since that business management monitoring report landed with the March update. So if you're happy, I'll just go through a couple of updates if that's okay.
No, please do go through the updates. Thank you. I think there was something else on the strategic risk table as well. Under the cyber security SR19, we had a current risk score rating as NA, and again a movement to risk NA. I think we questioned that. Perhaps you could update us on that, what that should actually say in those two columns.
Yep, Sure, happy to cover that cybersecurity one straight away. So that was an editing error coming across from the previous report. So that is still reporting as 15, and so the direction of travel is continuing, no change there, and partially effective when we're talking about effectiveness of controls. However, just as an additional around cybersecurity, the team are looking at requesting some additional funding around cyber initiatives. And also county-wide phishing exercises were completed in April across the council. So you may have been part of some of those emails, just checking in about test emails. Is this really legitimate? And if you were caught out, you completed the training.
One was caught out.
No, if you were caught
No,
out.
I'm not. No, I don't think I was. Was anybody else caught out? I'm not going to admit it anyway. I'll this afternoon. Right. Okay.
But excellent that you remembered the email. There was lots of nods going on there. And if you were caught out, then you were sent to where to do the relevant training straight away. So a great way of upskilling and making sure that we are aware of what these dodgy emails can look like. So that business case will be coming through, and I'll give a full update at the next time I'm in front of you with regards to that cybersecurity and additional funds supporting those cyber initiatives. I'm just going to go back to climate impact. So climate impact, since that report, the strategic climate risk is going to serve as more of an overarching risk, which will be linked to operational risk registers across the organisation. So what I talked about within that CAMS Risk Connect forum, we'll be able to link those and ensure that services are talking about climate risk and how that links to this overarching strategic risk. Owners will be identified within those service areas and making sure that we've got suitable controls, etc. That will support that continuing engagement and capacity building. There'll be 5 sprint groups which will be ongoing about talking about the partnership approach across stakeholders and across the county, supporting community resilience, capacity building and planning guidance, and in also ensuring health and social care sector, which are also undertaking their climate change risk assessment. So lots happening in the climate impact world as we sit here rather warm. So I think there will be some additional updates in my next report around climate risk and possibly an additional risk around that.
Yeah, there's a business case going forward for additional funds under the cybersecurity risk, and also there's going to be perhaps it's been already agreed a budget for the climate impact for extra works and controls on that. Is that correct?
So not additional budget in the climate risk. It's purely the climate.
Making sure that all services have got those controls in mind. Okay, right.
So as part of, so what you're seeing in front of you is the strategic risks which are associated with our delivery against our strategic plan. Underneath that, across all of our heads of service, we have an operational risk register, and we're making sure that operationally we are also thinking about how we are supporting any of those controls and mitigating actions attached to the climate risk strategically.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. Thank you, Butchie. Councillor McLaughlin.
Is there any detail on that we could actually have a look at, or could be shared broadly speaking with members? We had a motion at the last full council, which was all about providing more support in heat and flooding circumstances. It would be absolutely brilliant to know the underlying details on all of that, how it all pieces together, how those people responsible are meant to interact with this and how what they're meant to do, because we are increasingly in a warm climate. I'm baking hot at the moment. So.
Wet.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. I would suggest inviting our head of climate to come and talk you through what that looks like, and I'm sure she'd be more than willing to come along. There is also another risk which is being talked about, which I'll touch on. Find it now. Let me just bring that up. No, I've covered it, sorry. So I would suggest absolutely inviting a head of climate along to talk through that. And I'm happy to collate any operational links that we have across the organisation through the system that I mentioned.
Okay, I think that would be good to look at, actually. Yes, thank you. David, sorry, David, did you want to come in next?
Thank you for the report. Just looking at the way it's presented, so you've got on 12 you've got the overview, and on 14 we've got the table, and the difference between the two is that the table has a bit of information about the description and then the movement in whatever direction it's going. What I'd find quite useful is a small amount of commentary on that movement and why it's stayed the same or why it's gone down, or just to be able to interrogate those risks a little bit better in preparing for the meeting. So would that be something that might be able to be put in the future, Chair, if you agree that that would be useful?
I think that's a very good idea, actually. Yes. I mean, we will be looking at, and we come to the last agenda item this afternoon, our work programme. So I would suggest, gentlemen, we have a look at that there as well, about what we can put in, and possibly have an officer back to talk about that with regard to climate strategic risks. Okay, thank you. Councillor, please go ahead.
Sorry, thank you very much for that. And just one small query on number 12, the overview. You've got one of the mediums is in a different colour to the other mediums. I just wondered if there was a reason for that.
I can't see on my black. Right.
Yes, well spotted.
I just wondered if I was missing out on a specific colouring of risk that I didn't know about.
No, thank you for pointing out. And just on your previous question, I'll absolutely include as much detail as I can around that direction of travel, of even if it has stayed the same, because what we're really keen and what we're doing proactively is reviewing those controls and mitigating actions monthly in readiness for the business management monitor report, and also coming to here. So I'll put as much as I can in there. We have to be a bit careful about putting some controls in the public domain, but I'll absolutely give you a summary. That's fine.
All right, okay, lovely, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin and then Councillor Rawlings, please. Oh, you've finished. Councillor Rawlings, please.
I just wondered where the office relocation, the office move sits within this world, whether it's underneath one of the strategic risks, or it's considered a little local operational matter.
Yeah, that's operational. That falls under one of our agile programs. Yeah.
Right, okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments at all? As I said,
We've got the one question.
Oh, you've got the question from Kate as well. Yeah, please do.
Yeah, thank you. So Kate Cartwright writes that she thinks the most useful part of this paper is the mitigating actions behind risks in relation to change in the rating score and applying these mitigating actions. And I'm sorry, I'll read it out verbatim. If there has been little change in the rating and score post applying these mitigating actions, why is that? And then there's a follow-up question, but I'll let you handle that one first. No, in fact, it's related. Why is that? Is that because your tolerance of that risk is higher, or does more need to be done? What needs to be done, if so? Please.
Have you got that, Louise?
So I have read.
Sorry.
I have read the email. So
Okay, thank
and
you.
I think in the response that I gave Councillor Hingley about ensuring that we've got additional information in that section around where we've had updates with regards to mitigating controls and whether that has increased or decreased the residual scoring. I don't think the councillor gave a specific example, did they?
Kate hasn't given a specific example. No, that's right.
No, so I'll capture that in readiness for future reports. But I think it falls in under the same question about giving that additional information about the direction of travel, any changes in mitigating controls, etc.
Thank you. And she's also written to say that the risk trend table at point 24 is one of the most useful parts, and she'd like to see that form more of the bulk of any future paper if possible.
And noted.
Perhaps, thank you. Thank you. Just to be clear, Kate Cartwright, this question has been read out this afternoon, is one of our independent observers and members of this Audit and Governance Committee. Okay, thank you. Right, I don't think there are anything more to just to say our thanks to you, and we'll be seeing you later this year. and hopefully with a bit more information as well for the strategic register. Thank you. And we're noting committee the management report. Are you content? Thank you. Can't see anybody disagree. Thank you very much. Thank you. Do take some cake if you'd like some before you go. Right, that concludes agenda item 8. Now we're on to agenda item number 9, if we could. Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman Annual Review Report. And I believe Anita Bradley, you're going to lead off on this one. So thank you.
Chair, and good afternoon, committee. Obviously, you will be familiar with this report as it's an annual letter that we receive from the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman. So it's that annual review of our complaints that have gone through the Ombudsman system, but we also take the opportunity in this report to update the committee in relation to the landscape around complaints across the organisation, which we obviously choose to do. I think the committee, the report starts on page 265 of your papers, and you're recommended to receive and comment on the Ombudsman's annual review of the council so it's for 25-26, so ending on 31st of March this year, and the work that we are undertaking in relation to our complaints generally. So if I just take you through the report, the statistical analysis is from paragraph 6 onwards in your report. So I think the first headline is that there's a small increase in number of complaints upheld in 2025-26. So you've got 24 as opposed to 22 from 24-25. And in terms of the cases that were referred, that 80% of the cases that the Ombudsman considered, so that's not the same as all of the complaints that they received, but the ones that they considered, 80% were upheld. The national average for that is 89%. And also there were 3.1, they look at the population as a whole, so 3.1 upheld decisions per 100,000 residents. That was 2.9 in 24-25, which you'd expect because there's a slight increase in the number of upheld complaints, and that is compared favourably, I believe, with 5.2 in other similar authorities. So nationally, sorry, and then 5.2. 5.2 in other similar authorities. It was 5.3 in 2024-25. So I won't run through all of the statistics, but happy to take any questions on them. But they're in pages 7, 8, paragraph 7, 8, 9. So just dealing with the performance, I think, in terms of the outcome, the recorded outcomes. We've got a 100% compliance rate, which you would expect, because if you've agreed something with the Ombudsman, you would expect them to undertake that. And that used to be an area of weakness nationally, where councils would agree actions, but then not undertake them. But there's been a much greater focus within our organisation and all of others. So you see that the national average is 100%. So clearly all organisations are now complying with what the Ombudsman requires them to do. An area for us to consider going forward is paragraph 11, where we agreed deadlines for 23 cases, but in 2 of them we didn't meet them. And that's where we set that, we would have agreed the timescale, but for one reason and another, we didn't meet it in 2. So that's something that we'll be looking at going forward, to ensure that we comply wherever possible. In paragraph 13, it sets out the breakdown in a table of how the complaints are spread across the services in the organisation. And you'll see that there are a total of 126 complaints. And unsurprisingly, the largest number is in children's, because that touches so many people in terms of that. And adult care services, highways and transport, and that's reflective of the significant services across the authority that the council run. I think the only other thing that I would want to bring to your attention is that in terms of the ongoing children, education and families, is that it's consistent with previous years, and that most complaints relate to and continue to relate to SEND and education. And again, that reflects the national picture in relation to the SEND system and the fact that the system as is not satisfactory for families that are within that system, the professionals that are trying to run the system, and hence the fact that that is being looked at a national level. The other thing is that we set out in a table at paragraph 26 the landscape of corporate complaints. So you'll see that we've got 838 complaints, which is an increase from 24-25. I know, Councillor Fry, you've raised a question offline in relation to have we got comparative data with other authorities. I can't give you specific authorities, but I discussed this when I was at the LGA conference, both with the Ombudsman and with the Information Commissioner that had representatives there and stalls, and the national picture is just reflecting a significant increase in complaints across all public sector, including the Ombudsman and the Information Commissioner's Office, that have their own backlog of complaints to try and deal with. So it's reflective, and what the regulators are asking us as an organisation is, are we seeing an impact of AI on the writing of complaints and the length and complexity of complaints? And indeed we are, along with all other organisations as well. So that's something that is being considered. And I think the final thing I would just say on that is that it isn't necessarily a bad thing to receive complaints. It's the skill is in how you deal with them and making sure that your processes deal with them well at the first available opportunity. So it's not necessarily seen as a bad thing, but it's making sure that you then deal with as many upstream in the stage one and resolve them, as opposed to have them going through all the stages of complaints. Then finally, in the actions that we're going to take, we've recorded against the actions that we had last year, which are set out there, enhancing the learning from complaints process, which we've spent considerable time doing, and that there's still more to do in that, largely linked to the fact that the teams that would be doing that work were undergoing restructuring, and their ability then to concentrate on additionality, making sure that we're ready for the new complaint handling code, which we've done, which came into being in March, but there's always more to be done. And then ongoing support and training for services, which I know that the customer services team has concentrated on, and concentrated them in the areas where we're receiving the greatest number of complaints. So training with the officers to do, as I've said, make sure we can deal with it at the earliest opportunity. So the focus going forward is around embedding the complaint handling code to make sure that it's working well, improving our timeliness for dealing with complaints, strengthening the early resolution, which I've talked about, and enhancing learning and assurance. So I think that the performance remains stronger than the average for comparable councils. It's something that we take very seriously and we continue to work at. So I'm happy to take any questions. If there are any specific service questions, then I may ask colleagues from Ian Bottomley from Adults is Online, and also a colleague that's in the room for Laurie Baker, who I just would like to introduce to the committee that Laurie's new to the organisation, has been in role for 3 weeks now. So it may be that if there are any really testing questions, we'll have to come back with some written response, but happy to take any questions.
Good, thank you. Did you say you had another question from Kate? Thank you.
The last question from Kate Cartwright. As per point 25, the targeted training has been delivered to the Education Service, and it's said to be supporting improvements. It would be good to see quantitative evidence of this if you have it, please, as according to the paper, this remains the largest source of complaints.
I'm happy to take that and then just ask Laurie if there's anything more that she wants to add. I think I can't provide you with quantitative data because obviously we haven't had question in advance sufficiently, but I think it needs to be borne in mind that it's an area under significant pressure of presumably the question covers SEND, and so I think until we resolve how that operates for people that are trying to use the service, then I think the numbers of complaints coming in may not reduce. But what we've been concentrating on is the quality and the upstream response to deal with them. Laurie, I don't know if there's anything more that you want to add that's specific that you're aware of.
Thank you, Anita. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I would echo those points, and perhaps as some level of reassurance, only 3 weeks into the role, what I can tell you is that I'm very aware that officers within the education space do take the complaints process really seriously. As you can imagine, I've been undergoing an awful lot of induction, and yet time is taken by individual officers talking through these concerns. So although the numbers are significant, of course, although I believe broadly in line with other people in my role in other local authorities largely, we are aware that we do have a journey of SEND reform, about 3 years, to this great new vision actually for education that parents, schools and officers are welcoming. But I wanted to let you know that colleagues are absolutely committed to responding to these individual families' complaints when they come in. And I'm seeing a really high level of professionalism around that myself.
That's good to hear, because it can get quite emotional when it's when children are involved and people involved as well too. Councillor McLaughlin.
I've got a few questions and one pedantic point under point 13, where you say during 24-25, 89 complaints received in 24-25. So that should have been 25-26, the first one. That's just miswritten. Quite often when we're going through these things, we see figures like 9,000 children with the HCPs, 22,000 receiving SEND support, and that never kind of sits in my head in any sensible way, because there's no reference point. Is that a lot? Is that not very many? How does that compare to other environments? Is a percentage a better way of looking at that? I don't know. But it just seems to me that, again, we went through earlier the blue badge numbers, saying we were quite high in Oxfordshire on blue badges. Are we quite high on SEND? Are we quite high on EHCP? What makes Oxfordshire special? Maybe it's some of these things. I don't know. And then moving on from that, I was wondering, in terms of how the complaints are made, we don't have any figures on whether it's done by phone, by email or online. And I think it would be really interesting to understand what the makeup of those are, because there are certain things you can do in terms of automation of responses and the smart responses and quick responses if they are, for example, registered online in terms of a complaint. i.e., have you had any of these issues? And you go through a menu. And the final point I had, which really frustrated me, was in the email that's sent to Dr. Reeves, OBE, it says your annual statistics are available here. And I can't click on it. I'd love to be able to. Anyway, that's my final point.
Anita, did you want to come back in on some of the
I'll come back in.
But I think, sorry, sorry, to some extent, it's sort of a known unknown quantities.
Absolutely accept the typographical thing. Don't know how many times I've read that and yet not picked it up. So I've taken full responsibility for that. In terms of the percentages, I think what we've tried to do is to give you context. So when you look at the figures of 9,000 and 45,000, what we're trying to say there in paragraph 17 and 18 is that in relation to the number of complaints we get, we've got significant amount of customer and client interaction, so 45,000 contacts, of which you'll get complaints. Now, I think in terms of percentage, I think it would, what we're presenting to you is the Ombudsman's report. And so there's a limit to how much work we would be beneficial for us to do to present it statistically to you. But every year I get challenges around and new ideas, and that's what this committee is here for, to challenge us. So I'm quite happy to have a talk with you outside of this meeting to see what would be helpful in next year, because every year Sarah, who's in the room, does a significant amount of work with me in relation to this, and she interacts with all of our complaint services to try and present the information that's in a way useful to you. What we haven't done is gone off and benchmarked, because I think what we, quite honestly, in this area of work, what we're trying to do is put our focus on answering the complaints and making sure. But again, the comments you've got around the way in which they've come in, no, I haven't got them. Probably the service have got them, but we haven't added that layer of detail into this report.
I just think the manner in which they come in could actually dictate or be helped by, or sort of form an opinion on how we should respond. So there are different ways in which you can do different things on different platforms, and it's just really understanding that mix and how they come in.
So Kit Collingwood, who's come in as the director, will be looking particularly at that area to ensure that we digitise as much as possible, to make sure that we also use the full functionality of the systems that we do have to try and pick up that, and to do frequently asked questions, and to try and upstream as many of them as we possibly can. What you'll find is that once someone's gone to the Ombudsman, they have at that point exhausted all of the complaints process, and you often find that they are particularly entrenched in either a point of view or with service that's provided by the council in one way or another, whether that be because they haven't received the service or they don't like the outcome of the answer that they have received. And that's why those ones that the Ombudsman might not have picked up all of them, because they have to again decide that there's an element of added value they can give to looking at it at that point.
Thank you. That's really interesting, actually, and noting how the complaints are coming in. Is it a phone call? Is it an email? Is it in from a council member? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's something that could be looked at and possibly for a future report, possibly. I noticed we still don't record compliments at all. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's an annual thing that I mention.
No, in fact, I believe I undertook to make sure that I put that in. So having given the assurance to the committee that we do listen, I've clearly not picked that up either. So
sorry, I should have. Yeah. Anyway, I just think it would be nice. I mean, council members often receive compliments about a service they've received, and I think it would be quite nice if you do get that, to pass it on to the service team that has done something good and right for somebody. And it's pleasing because, yes, as I think you've mentioned the AI indication about possible people using AI to put complicated complaints in or raise questions over services and things. I don't know if that's something that you've experienced at all. She's nodding. Whether you've got any examples of that at all. but it'd be interesting to hear possibly if you've got an example or two.
I realise I didn't pick up the point that Councillor McLaughlin raised around not being able to access the link. What we'll do is make sure we send that round to you in a form that you can access it.
Thank you for that. Sorry, I didn't to interrupt you, Anita. Right.
No, thank you. Just to pick up on your point, yes, I am hearing that from officers. And I thought, as Anita was speaking, it might be helpful to give some context about the scale. So if we do think about those young people with plans, those 9,000, most of our officers have a caseload in the region of about 300 active cases. So if you can imagine the amount of correspondence that's going back and forth, it's pretty significant and substantial. So certainly at a council level, we're hearing about the prevalence of AI in complaints and communication, but you might also be interested to know that this is something that's being raised with me from head teachers regularly. So it's not only councils, it is also head teachers that are reporting a disproportionate or rising picture of complaints into schools and often driven by AI.
Interesting. Right. Thank you. Right. Councillor Rawlings next, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I would find it a bit more helpful if we could have some context to these numbers, so that we're looking at the number of complaints and so forth over the 3 years, but I'm not seeing there, and I think there is some reference, but it would be helpful to have that more built in, whereby we look at the number of cases of within the children's services that we're looking at, or the number of cases that we're looking at in adult care. We know demographically that adult care, for example, is going to go up a lot in future. So it would be reasonable to look at that in context to the underlying baseload of work that's having to be handled. I think in terms of send, yes, we've got some more complaints in some ways, but we know that we're dealing with that issue, and we would expect, I guess, the number of complaints to go up before we turn it round and hopefully get it to a better place. Although this is the Ombudsman's report, one thing that did kind of concern me was at paragraph 26 on page 269, looking at the corporate complaints in total, the overall complaints, which have gone up from 328 2 years ago to 530. Now, this hasn't surged through into those upheld by the Ombudsman or anything like that, but it's just a bit concerning that level of increase of complaints is happening, even if we think they are and they turn out to be not fully valid. There is some unhappiness there that's causing those complaints, and it would be interesting to understand if there are any patterns to what's driving that.
If I could I'll deal with the last point first, which was the same point that Councillor Fry raised, which is the increase in complaints. So as that table is put together, you'll see that adults and children are separated out and everything else is in that top box. And if you think about the highways matters that we've been dealing with this year, then I think that might explain the increase. And obviously Councillor McLaughlin is saying about flags, yeah, that will have been a theme coming in from August 2025 onwards. So that would be my intuition. I think with this report we try and give you a flavour than absolutely inundate you with data. Quite happy to take away anything. I think I didn't quite understand, Councillor Rawlings, the point around service. I have got Ian online. If there's anything, Ian, you wanted to add specifically about adults and context of numbers of interactions or anything you wanted to give context to members.
Thank you, Anita. I don't have anything particular about the context, the overall types of complaints, but we receive complaints in adult social care about assessment, about charging, and particularly around services that people receive that we are commissioning. So we actually just yesterday, we had a meeting with our co-production board made up of experts by experience, family members, service users, carers. And one of the priorities we've set ourselves for this year is to look at how we handle complaints at the earlier phase, as Anita was talking about at the stage 1, because for adult social care, actually a really key part of complaints is the learning and what we do differently, particularly around our commission services. So we're going to be doing some work about how we can find more ways of addressing those points in the paper. The second 2 points about the early learning, the early resolution and learning. And we'd be more than happy to bring that back to this committee in due course. It's going to be a co-produced piece, so we're going to be working with people about the best ways of deriving learning from complaints, the best ways of setting things up. One piece of feedback we get consistently is that we might somehow answer the question but miss the point. And there is a sense of, do we give people the opportunity to tell us what it is they want by way of resolution, rather than give them an answer to the question they've asked us. So we'll be working with service users and carers to see if we can come up with a more rounded way of meeting people's needs and hopefully addressing some of those recurrent issues that come up in terms of complaints.
Yeah, all of that.
Thank you.
All of that fine in terms of complaint handling process, and that's absolutely right. I was making a very simple point about how many adult cases do we have in 23-24, how many do we have in 25-26, and if the answer is 20% more in terms of the base load, you might reasonably expect that to kick through into the number of complaints. And I was just asking that we look at the complaints in the context of the base load of work. It was nothing more complicated than that.
Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you. I don't think there are any other questions to be asked or comments to be made. So for this agenda item, the committee is recommended to receive and comment on the local government and social care Ombudsman's annual review of Oxfordshire County Council for 25-26 and the work undertaken by the council regarding its handling of complaints. Committee happy to note? Thank you, we are. Thank you, we'll note that one.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Laurie.
Thank you. Thank you both. And welcome to Oxfordshire County Council, Laurie. I should have said that earlier. Right. Now I'd like to welcome, and I believe online is Simon Matthews from Ernst & Young.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Are we an item ahead here, or?
I've run an item ahead, and I think I did this the other day as well too. I do apologise. Yes, we need. Yeah, we changed order. Right. Okay. Fine. Thank you. Sorry, we're here for item 10 then. No, that's fine. Unless no, let's do item 10. Let's keep it in order. It's my fault. I went through an extra page very quickly. I do apologise, Simon. Sorry, are we there? Right. Okay, sorry. So this is the report by the Deputy Chief Executive at the Section 151 Office, and the assessment of the Council's financial management, controls and governance. It is a very important report too. Over to you, please, Kathy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. So if you recall, we brought a similar report to this committee back in last September. We had a discussion at the last meeting. You said it'd be useful to do a light touch update on the report again, as at now, to just set out where the council is compared to other councils, particularly those in receipt of exceptional financial support. So the intention of this is to provide an overview on and assurance on the council's financial management, controls and overall financial resilience in the context of some ongoing and significant financial pressures facing local government nationally. As members will be aware and noted in the report, a growing number of councils have required exceptional financial support, or EFS, from government in recent years, and the table in the report does show the ever-growing list. Each year that goes by, that list seems to get longer, back through 2019-20, which was the first year of ESF. Generally, as a result of things like sustained pressures in social care, low levels of reserves and the impact of high needs dedicated schools grant deficits and wider financial challenges. So the report goes through Oxfordshire's position against those national trends, concludes that the council remains financially resilient, with strong financial controls, compliance with the SIP for Financial Management Code, which is shared back in January as part of the budget process, a balanced financial position over recent years, and reserves that remain above the risk assessed minimum level. So things we've included in the report are updates on some of the prudential indicators, where we've got the ratio of debt financing to the net revenue stream forecast to be 4.4% for the council, compared to 4.7% for county councils who haven't sought EFS and 9.8% for councils who have. Also, the other prudential indicator noted there sets out that the council has an affordable level of debt without being overly risk averse. Also, just worth noting, I know all councils are different sizes, so proportion is important here as well, but the average level of general fund balances where councils have sought EFS is around 11.5 million. That compares to our risk assessed level of 32.7 million for 26-27. And I note we are slightly above that in the current year, following the year-end outturn for 24-25. Para 15. Updates on the level of spend or budgeted funding for adults and children's services, and shows that we are managing to increase that year on year while still balancing the overall council position. So just to finish off, obviously there are risks ongoing. The report then at the end notes that we are in a strong position, but there are risks including ongoing uncertainty surrounding the future management of high needs. And also the ongoing impact of the fair funding review too on the level of grant funding available to the council in future years. Notes there is less flexibility in 26-27, as we have noted elsewhere. We've got less likelihood of there being significant amounts of additional interest on cash balances achieved in year, and obviously we need to make more savings from 27-28. So I think that was all I wanted to say as an introduction. So welcome any questions. Thank you.
That was a very quick run through. Thank you very much. Yeah, it is very important. Noting actually the number of councils as well. It's gone to 38, I think it is, maybe 39 for 26-27. We're getting into financial difficulties. Not good. I think Birmingham's still there as well too.
Probably worth just noting the number that recur in those lists as well. I think we spoke last time about the number once you're in that position, it's really difficult to actually wind back and out of that again. You can see lots of those councils are in repeated receipt of EFS across those years.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Councillor Hocklin first, I think.
Yeah, I was just interested. What happens when a council who is in EFS becomes part of the unitary? Obviously, there I'm thinking of West Berkshire, who appears twice in this list, who may become part of one of the new elements that we are looking at. That's the first question. I have another one.
So effectively, the resources are amalgamated depending on the outcome and the shape that is determined. So what you would expect in an area where you've got one part that's financially challenged and another one that's financially more viable, that effectively overall you'll probably just about be okay. But obviously, if you think about there's challenges within Essex, for example, with the massive debt in Thurrock. So it's a way of trying to, the government I think sees it as a way of trying to help resolve some of those challenges. However, I think that the challenge that there will be is that generally the smaller authorities tend to end up with less financial resilience. So you could end up seeing more authorities becoming in need of support. One of the challenges that we've got beyond 28-29 is that there is quite significant support from the recovery grant that finishes at 28-29. So you could see, if that's not replaced, many authorities becoming more financially challenged. I think it's also worth noting, have we actually set out what exceptional financial support actually is? Because all it is borrowing. And that's part of the problem, is because obviously borrowing costs not just the principal, but the interest as well. And there are some councils who are having to get EFS for their EFS because they don't have the money to pay for the borrowing costs. So it is not a solution to the issue. However, it is the only mechanism that the government are using at the moment. So I can't necessarily see a way that the situation is necessarily going to improve in the short term.
Thank you.
Thank you. And therein lies a warning.
Yes,
A
indeed.
big warning.
My second
particularly for-
question.
All right, go
Sorry,
ahead. Sorry.
my second question was, is there any information on existing unitaries in EFS?
Well, we can go down the list and have a look. It'll be whichever ones are in on that list that are unitaries, and there obviously a lot of the London ones are unitary.
I think the other thing that we have to bear in mind, actually, as all councils do, over the years, national government has devolved a lot more responsibilities on local councils for doing certain services and asked them to, but have not funded them. And as we've seen, this council is also going to have to cut by 24.6 million because of government changes to funding. Although local councils are being asked every year on, whether they're districts, counties, unitaries, whatever, to undertake more services. And of course, there's the it's the I lost the word. The demographic, sorry, Councillor Rawlings mentioned this word earlier as well. The fact we've got older population as well too, and who are staying. Demographics, there we go. Thank you for that. So it's been a long afternoon already, and it's very hot in here. So demographics that is not helping every single council, in fact, actually, in our services and on our service teams. Sorry.
I was just looking down that list, and I think they're I'd say 95% of them are unitaries.
Of various size. I think there's a judicial review in, isn't there, a moment for Essex? Is it Essex that's got a judicial review at the moment? For their LGR. Yeah, for Jerry Running. Sorry. Cathy Wilcox, please.
Yeah, it was just to add, in terms of that sort of looking holistically at any new council, that the level, if the agreement to further EFS would consider things like the level of reserves that council is holding, so those would be used before, I assume, that more EFS would be agreed. And there's just a wider point that obviously, as Lorna said, the more, if you keep layering EFS, borrowing for EFS, you eventually hit a point where your ratio of debt financing is so high and that you can't actually take any more borrowing. So it's only a delaying thing, I think. If you look at that list, there will come a point where it isn't possible to sustain more borrowing.
Thanks. So I've got Councillor Ron Batstone next, and then Councillor Lee Rawlings, please.
I would just note that one account, Berkshire has lots of unitaries and has lots of councils on this list. I just note that.
Rawlings, I think, was next.
Yeah. So Cathy's point about the county fund or whatever, the General Reserve Council, it's going to be very interesting to see how all that washes out once SEND is resolved for all the councils, because those numbers are so enormous. In our case, we have also got a decent reserve put by, and I'm sure Lorna will, whenever the 90% comes in, we'll still keep a bit back for the possibility of future risks. But clearly, when all that unravels, it will be interesting to see how councils sit in terms of their general reserves. In terms of the councils on the list, yes, Berkshire has got these 6 tiny unitaries which are not viable. None of them are viable, never have been. And unsurprisingly, 3 of them here are listed as being in EFS. And of course, EFS is about cash flow, not necessarily their underlying position. Swindon's on the list as well. And I think it's generally accepted that the sort of levels that we were talking about for Berkshire, 150, 160,000 population, just too small, and even Swindon at 230 or 240, whatever it is light. Previously, people have talked about, in the Tory government, they were talking about 300. This government started talking about 500, but they seem to have taken a different electoral view now. I don't know. it would be useful to look at, and it is quite striking to look at the table in 15, where we've got the increase in the costs of those services. You know, probably something like 50% in adult services and 60-something% in children's. Those are striking 5-year rates of increase, and I think have to be thought about very carefully. We've got the point in 17 that our services overspent by nearly 10 million last year, and yes, happily, our Treasury receipts came in to save the day, but there's going to be a lot of issue about how long our Treasury and our balances can continue to do that. There is a note in 28 about the fact that our balances must go down because of send. My question might be, when would we hope to get the 90%, the whatever it is, 124 million or whatever it is, 121 million back from government? When are we expecting that to come through? When it's scheduled?
So we're expecting feedback on the send reform plan in the autumn. I think Tim's working on an estimated receipt in probably October or November, but that isn't confirmed, and that is causing us some issues at the moment because it is obviously a material.
And I appreciate that as we get that in, we'll be spending more out. So it's not.
The forecast, I think, for 26/7 is, I can't remember the figure, 66 million, I think, off the top of my head. So we're almost replacing quite a large chunk of it as fast as we're receiving it.
Thank you.
Laura Baxter wanted to come at this point.
So I just wanted to pick up the further part in terms of whilst we obviously are expecting to get the 90% in this financial year, but obviously that's only up to the end of 25. So we've got 2 further years before and a lack of clarity about how much funding that we will receive in relation to that. And obviously the date before the day before the new council start is the end of the date at which the local authorities are taking responsibility for it. So there's a lot of challenge in terms of not just the timing, but also potential implications, again, thinking about new authorities.
Yeah, I think one comment is small isn't always best, actually, when it comes to delivering the wide range of services that a county council does or unitary does. So, on Oxfordshire, please. But I think it's unlikely we'll hear that, unfortunately. Right, are there any other comments or questions that committee members or indeed officers wanted to add at all to the report? And just to say thank you very much. It shows Oxfordshire again in a good light, but there are some double Rumsfelds, known unknowns, and they're quite worrying actually with regard to future local government with the new LGR. Right, okay, I think committee, sorry, and I do apologise for jumping to item 10 before item 11, agenda item 11. So the Audit and Governance Committee is recommended to note the report. Are members content with that? Thank you, I'm not seeing any dissent, so that is noted. I will try once again to introduce Simon Matthews from EY. Apologies for that. Welcome to this afternoon's meeting. Over to you for your update.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So it's just a brief verbal update. We don't have any reports to bring this afternoon, but we did just want to give you a brief verbal update on developments from external audit. So I suppose I would offer some congratulations to the council in that, as we heard earlier in the meeting, the county council accounts, pension fund accounts and annual governance statement were published on time. So were published before the deadline of the 30th of June. The notice was published correctly, and that's not something it's not something that should be taken for granted, because it's not something that has been achieved across all councils. So that is a great starting point. I will start quickly with progress on the pension fund audit. So the work on the pension fund audit, or the execution phase of the pension fund audit, started at the start of June. You'll remember in the audit planning report that we brought to the May meeting of this committee, we did highlight some potential capacity concerns around ability to service the audit. I just wanted to report back and be clear that officers have worked extremely hard. So there has been a good level of effort to make sure that we could start the audit promptly, and we have made a good level of progress. So work is now largely complete in terms of what we do locally, but our Centre of Excellence is doing the testing of the investment assets of the fund. And clearly, if you look at the fund's accounts, that's probably the most significant part of those accounts. Again, that's going well. But just we do need, there is some evidence outstanding for some of those Brunel investments that were mentioned earlier in the committee. So really important that we have, together with officers, a clear focus on getting that evidence, so we're able to complete our work by the planned date of the end of July. And that really is important because the pension fund accounts impact the county council accounts, but also the district council accounts across Oxfordshire. So really important we stay up to speed on timetable there. But a positive report back, I think. In terms of the county council, as mentioned by Ella earlier, the audit starts in earnest in the execution phase next Monday. Again, you'll remember in the plan that we brought to the May meeting of the committee, we talked about the need to prepare a risk assessment on the council's preparedness to rebuild. So will it be able to support some extra work this year, where we go back and look at the year where we did no work in 22-23 or limited work in 22-23, and undertake extra procedures to be able to rebuild assurance to the extent that we can. So that risk assessment is now largely complete. It will be shared with Lorna as the 151 officer for comment. There will then be an audit plan addendum that details the results of that risk assessment and what we intend to do, that we'll bring back to the next meeting of the committee. Just wanted to pick up on the point around timeline that was mentioned earlier in the committee. So Ella is correct that the statutory backstop for completing audit work on the 25-26 accounts has been pulled forward to the end of next January, so January 2027. We are clear that we want to be done by the end of this November. So we don't want to be running up against that backstop if we have to. It gives us some contingency, but we don't want to use that. It's important to remember that the statutory backstop for next year, for 26-27, comes forward to November 2027. So, you know, timely assurance is better assurance anyway, but we need to be in a position where we can meet that next statutory backstop. So that was just a very brief verbal canter through of where we are and some of the issues. Happy to take any questions.
Right, so thank you very much, and thank you much for the compliments to Oxfordshire County Council. We will pass those on, hopefully the directors will, to the whole team. I think that would be lovely actually to do so. So perhaps we could note that actually, Jack. That would be lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Simon. You've mentioned the statutory backstop of January 27, but your desire to go for the end of November 2026, that would be great. So I think we'll note that, and I'm seeing nods around the table as well on that one. That's really good. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions that members have at all for EY? I'm not seeing any this afternoon. Thank you. And thank you for your comments as well too, with regard to the investment assets and the Brunel investments on the pensions fund and so forth. Is there anything that is concerning you at all with those investments then that you wanted to highlight at all?
I don't think there's anything that I would say is a concern. There are some areas where we do not yet have complete evidence. Officers are working hard to get that. I think liaising with LGPS more broadly. It's just important to maintain a clear focus on getting that, because we need, or would very much like, to have the audit done by the end of this calendar month. So it's just, we've progressed really well. As I said, we did flag some issues around potential concerns around officer capacity, but officers have worked extremely hard to deal with that, and the evidence that we have received has been good and timely, and we've also kind of flexed what we've done to help with that, I think. So we're in a good place. We just need to maintain a focus on making sure we get these last bits of evidence around Brunel.
Right, okay, thank you very much. I think we've, oh, sorry, no, sorry, I see councillor.
I'm just going to say, it's good to hear we're on track for an unqualified opinion. That's wonderful.
Well, I'm not saying we're on track for an unqualified opinion. I'm hopeful that we will be able to do some work to rebuild. Whether we can give any unqualified opinions, I would say, is still a moot point, as I've said previously. So I'm not committing to that, but you'll receive the results of our risk assessment in due course, and I would hope we can do some procedures to rebuild.
Right, okay, thank you. Thank you. Right, is anything else any officers wanted to know? Right, thank you very much indeed, Simon, and we shall see you in, I think, is it September or November next? I think it's, no, it's September. In fact,
So
actually, yeah, September.
we'd hope to
right.
bring that audit plan addendum in September, and then
Right.
audit results report in November.
Right. Okay. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, and have a good August.
Thank you.
See you in September. Bye bye.
Bye.
Right. Very nice. Very nice. Very good job. Very good. Good. Right. Agenda item 12, if we could please, a health and safety annual report. When you're ready, do you want to introduce yourself and Paul and go through your report, please, the health and safety annual report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm Paul Lundy. I'm the Health and Safety Manager for Oxfordshire County Council. So just as a brief introduction, I think that the report is fairly self-explanatory, but this is a primarily a look back report over 25-26 in terms of the health and safety activity that we've been undertaking across the authority, with some of our kind of themes and priorities for the current year. I think some of the key takeaways worth of note is in the last year we've put quite a lot of focus into particularly fire safety as one of our priority areas. This is on the back of some of the regulatory and guidance changes as a result of the Grenfell fire and some of the additional requirements that we now have to comply with, in particular on our property estate. As you're probably aware, the County Council has a rather large and diverse property estate. Many of our buildings are of a certain age as well. So we've been working really hard with property and assets teams to put a programme of improvement investment in our property, really to bring it up to modern standards, which is really good news. Also, along with fire safety, we've been collaborating very closely with Fire and Rescue Service to mitigate some of the particular risks that our firefighters are dealing with in terms of exposure to harmful chemicals and contaminants as a result of their dealing with operational incidents and so forth. Health and safety is fundamentally about, we want people to go home unharmed at the end of the day. It's about keeping people in work and safe and fit and healthy. And so we do a lot of work with colleagues in HR and working with the unions to make sure that we've got a really kind of diverse and robust package of support for our employees and our workforce in general, which goes without saying in terms of making sure that we're keeping people fit and healthy in work, which obviously has knock-on effects in terms of productivity, retention, making us an attractive employer, and ultimately reducing sickness absence. As well, in terms of health and safety, fundamentally it is also about complying with the law, and therefore we do run a programme of assurance activity through the course of the year, looking at targeted service areas, focusing on significant risks, not the trivia, looking at where people are doing particularly more hazardous operations and so forth. Overall, I think it's been a fairly steady picture in terms of health and safety. We still retain a very good kind of proactive approach, working really closely with managers and directors. We've had no enforcement action or activity from the health and safety executive, which is the enforcer for health and safety. So good news on that front. But hopefully the report will give you a bit of a snapshot of some of the areas that that we work in supports the services, really. So, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul. I had a question. Don't you got any questions from our observers from Kate or Paul? Have we? No.
No
Right,
further
okay,
questions.
Okay. Under the safety event statistics, the school one, we've got an increase, I see, from last year on accidents with injury at schools of 35%. I mean, it's quite a big percentage increase there. I just wondered if there was any common factor at all with those accidents with injury.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite difficult to get any kind of clear indication of why there's been an increase in schools. A lot of these incidents quite often will be associated with outdoor play, and I know obviously in terms of the curriculum we're really promoting teaching in terms of taking the children out on visits, forest school, doing a lot more kind of physical activity, which invariably will lead to more quite often some more accidents involving the children, but they are generally of a low level. So there's nothing there that jumps out at us as a red flag, but obviously we're keeping an eye on it.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Ron Batstone, please.
Yes, again with your schools report, I noticed when you mentioned violence and threatened behaviour, but violence was up 95% with 40% in 2 special schools. That's fine, but then you mentioned that there's analysis saying there's increasing proportion of reports associated with pupils with SEND in mainstream schools, and particularly since we're trying to get more pupils with SEND into mainstream schools. Is this a worry?
Obviously the education teams will have access to this data and be looking at this. There is a bit of a mixed picture when it comes to reporting, particularly violence and aggression. A large proportion are reported by the special schools, and I think we have 3 or 4 special schools that are still maintained schools in the county, so they will account for a large proportion of those. In terms of the maintained schools, clearly, there is an increasing requirement, and the future is to increase SEM provision within mainstream. And we're continuing to work with the behavioural support teams to make sure that schools have got the training to be able to deal with some of these complex needs. But I think it's early days. We will obviously, again, we'll do some deep dive into that data, and I think if the teams do pick up particular trends, that could be a particular school reporting a high level, or we might see a trend with a particular pupil or nature of violence or aggression. We do proactively contact the school. We liaise with teams in education to make sure there's strategies in place to deal with that. So we are actively trying to follow up.
It's very good that you're doing that.
Thank you. Councillor Lee Rawlins.
Just a question. In the wake of Grenfell and in the wake perhaps of this demotion, what arrangements are there out there so that we can get reporting of buildings that have particular risks or may have stocks of accelerants or flammable materials or whatever that represent risks? To what extent do we have a full picture of issues at the schools that we have and the buildings that we have, whether it be asbestos or dodgy concrete or whatever else the issues are? There seemed to be a point where in the past where there was more requirement to have inspections, and then I got the impression it's sort of slightly taken away with a light touch approach, but I'm not quite sure where we've landed now after Grenfell and with the revised approach to things.
It's probably more of a question for our senior manager in property, but what I would say from my position is there is some rigour around compliance for many of those issues you mentioned. In particular for fire safety, I do know that every single building in the County Council has a fire risk assessment in place. We have a condition survey done. We have a pretty good understanding of where we are with our buildings, which is helping us to identify where we need to do improvements. So the fact that we're doing improvements is a good thing because it shows that we understand where we need to improve. Schools, as you may or may not know, a lot of their day-to-day funding is delegated down to an individual school level. Again, that's part of the service that my team provide is we provide support to schools to make sure that the schools are complying with their statutory obligations. But I would also note that the county council does not have any really high risk buildings, particularly from a fire safety. We don't have tower blocks or big residential buildings or petrochem type sites. So absolutely.
Thank you. Right. I'm sorry. Discovered what might be causing this.
But you're absolutely right. That is one of the priorities that's come on since production of the report that's come on to our record.
I mean, you mentioned larger schools there. I'm just thinking of Cheney in Headington. I mean, what's it, 1,700 pupils or something? It's a very large number of pupils on one site as such. Okay, thank you. Can I just ask as well, just one last question? With council staff moving to the Midlands house and things, has the security there been checked?
I believe it has. There will be a security audit done as part of Midland House, and we'll obviously keep that under review as well when people start getting in there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Ron Batstone, please.
Yes, just safety event high insights on fire and rescue service. I got a bit confused at the end. You've got two headings saying work-related occupational ill health. One of them shows a 47% increase, which looked quite big. But I didn't know why. I didn't really understand the two headings.
This is relating to the increase in reported vehicle-related safety incidents compared to last year. There's a 47% increase with regard to fire and rescue service personnel.
So the obviously fire and rescue, they do capture slightly different. They use a different system, so they capture categories slightly different to the rest of the council. Obviously, one of the significant risks for firefighters in the sense that they're responding to incidents sometimes under blue light, and therefore traffic incidents are captured separately. There has been an increase in that. I can't comment on that personally. That I'd have to refer that to fire and rescue colleagues. In terms of work-related ill health, yes, it is 100%, but it's only gone from 2 people to 4, so it's still very low numbers. So even though it's high percentage, we're talking about a very small number of people. So again, although it's 100%, it's not overly concerning in its own right.
So those two are really the same thing?
Yeah.
Just expressed slightly differently. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. I think, members, we've covered that item. Are we content to accept the report and the plans for 26-27? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming, Paul. Sorry that we've had a problem with the sound.
I'll just clarify, if I may, for anyone listening online to the live stream, that it was off temporarily, for which apologies. I muted the room in order to stop the noise in here for members. So I think there was a 2-minute interval, but as I've remarked to you, I'll be minuting Chair's question as ever.
Thank you.
So that accounts for the gap for anyone listening on YouTube. Apologies for that.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation, Jack, too. Right. We've just now completed agenda item 12. We're on to agenda item 13, Fire and Community Safety Annual Report for 25-26. And we're joined by our Chief Fire and Rescue Officer. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And I fear I may have discovered how I can sabotage committee rooms through the Teams meeting. I was trying to join the meeting to allow me to show a quick video to you all, and my laptop connected me to the audio in that room, which turned on that machine, which is what created the loop, I believe.
Right.
So when I went out and turned that off, it seemed to roll. So yeah, apologies to everyone online. I believe the cause of the gremlins.
I'm glad. I thought we had a phantom or something.
Yeah.
Could you ask me to change your nameplate, please, Rob, if you've got yours there. It doesn't matter. The fella's gone. Thank you.
So the next test I was going to do, if you bear with me, is I think I've now joined the meeting properly. So if you're happy, I will try and share just a quick video, which is a summary of the annual plan, which I think is helpful just to share with the committee, so you can see what we'll be sharing with the public. I just need to get this to work. So if I go to sharing a video is always the biggest test, but hopefully I can get it to work, and I can make sure that I can click on sound. Okay, fantastic. It's on the screen, which is always a good start. So now we just need to make sure the sound is working, and I'll turn off my mic. Okay, thank you very much. Hopefully that I'll stop sharing. And also leave the meeting. So I don't cause any more issues. But just to say that hopefully it just gives you a rundown of the key highlights from the report, all the things which we're really proud of. Obviously, it has 25-26 was an extremely challenging year for us at Fire and Rescue Service because of having to bist of motion, and also the challenge we had around the public consultation and going out, because we are facing some really extreme difficulties with where we are. None more so than the current period. We always suffer from what we kind of describe as summer availability pressures. We currently have a perfect storm around the weather and the lack of rain, and obviously the dryness we're seeing. School holidays tend to have an impact on some of the antisocial behaviour, and we know things are just going to be very challenging for our crews, but they do an incredible job. I was at the fire on Sunday evening. We had out to the west of Abingdon, where it was incredible hard work in really arduous conditions, and we had 15 of our fire engines there. We had support from colleagues from other fire and rescue services coming into the county to make sure everybody was safe. So, and again, a fantastic job. Although we lost a number of caravans, an incredible amount of work was done to make sure we didn't lose anyone else's home. So, really proud of the work they did. But hopefully, the annual report is just another good indication of us trying to be really honest about our performance, recognising what we're doing really well, recognising that we do have challenges, but we are looking to address those. And sometimes the other teams in my area get overshadowed by fire and rescue, but I think it's really important in this report to recognise the incredible work Trading Standards is doing, the incredible work our joint Oxfordshire resilience team does as well. And we also have a very small team which looks after the community safety element and making sure we're supporting that across the county. So yeah, really proud of the work they do as well. But happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. I saw Councillor Rawlings and then Councillor James Fry, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I had 3 questions, Rob. One was when I started to ask before about what scope we have either in law or otherwise to get information from premises about risks that might be there, whether they've got stocks of accelerants, flammable materials, or other inherent risks that it would be well if we were aware of in advance and could advise them on. So I don't know what the legal powers that we've got there and what we can do on that. There's reference to the community emergency plans, which seem to me to be a very sensible idea, and what we could do to try and encourage communities, parishes, towns to have a CEP, and whether we can offer them templates and things that would help them on their way so that they can just populate the bits of data that are relevant to their locality. And finally, just reflecting on what we're seeing, emerging climate change risks, including heat waves and flooding.
Good questions there.
Yeah, so the first question is, under the Fire and Rescue Act 2004, there is a section 72D, and the reason why I know that so well is because we talk about 72D information, and that part of the Act gives us permission, or gives us a legal permission to go and gather risk information. So we gather risk information on lots of different premises. We have a kind of stratified approach where we talk about generic risks related to a type of property. So if we're going to for example, a mechanic's garage, we'd expect certain hazards. The other layer we have is around site specific. So actually, if we visit a premises, and we do that under the legislation, if it is fairly standard and what we'd expect, we wouldn't necessarily capture any specific information. But if it had something out of the ordinary, we'd capture that. So a firefighter turning up, the incident commander will understand what they're going to. They will say, right, well, I'm going to a shopping centre. They'll understand the standard risks associated with that. And if there are additional risks they need to be aware of, then we would make sure that that is captured within our system. And then we provide that in 3 different ways. If it's a small amount of information, it goes onto the turnout ticket, so it's on the ticket in front of them. If it needs a bit more detail, it goes into a site-specific risk information card, which we have for hundreds of premises. If it's a risk like Blenheim Palace, as a good example, we will have a complete tactical fire plan. And so we'll have much more detailed plans. We have all of that, and all of that information is available to the firefighters on the fire engine through their mobile data terminals on the fire engines.
Do we need anything else? Is anything in train post-grant?
Sorry, councillor, could you use your microphone because
Sorry,
the online can't hear otherwise.
just asking whether anything more is in train, whether we would need anything else post Grenfell and the other sort of investigations that have happened.
So the reality is it's an ongoing process. We're always looking to improve that process around risk information and how we gather information, how we use it using technology. So there is a process involved in making sure we know which premises are out there, making sure we know we're getting the information from the responsible people and they know what information we need, and then making sure we're getting that to the crews, and then making sure that that information is current. And that's the challenge we face, but we have a pretty good system in place to allow us to do that, to make sure as soon as we know information, we can make sure it's there for the crews to see. There's always learning, there's always things we can do differently, and there's a fine balance between providing the right level of information to support the officer in charge and providing too much information where it just becomes overwhelming. So again, there's a whole system around that we are working, but the reality is it helps us and it's working. I'll just remember the next two questions. So community emergency plans, to a certain extent, those templates do exist. So the emergency planning team will go out and they will support individual communities who want to develop those plans. The biggest challenge we have is persuading communities and finding the people within those communities who are willing to do the work. So we won't do the work for them. We will support them as much as we can, but it does rely on that. And we've got some fantastic examples of communities who really have taken that on, particularly around flooding, because once they've suffered flooding, they want to be able to manage it going forward. So that is another piece of work where we are there to help. We just need the communities to come forward, and that's part of the promotion piece that we try and do.
Yeah, I've had experience of a local parish not wanting to take on the responsibility of doing the emergency planning as such, even though we've had talks from the communities, charities and so forth, actually giving advice on how to do it. It's finding the willingness within certain parishes, officers to actually do it. So I'm very keen on them actually. And I'd like to see more actually in Oxfordshire than we've got at the moment, particularly in the city, I think, where not all of it is parished as such, but there are neighbourhood forums and so forth. It's not only flooding, it's the other side of it. It's the extreme heats and looking for cooler spaces for people to go to. So where we had warm spaces, we need cooler spaces. And I think that's been already mentioned actually by a cabinet member, in fact, this last Tuesday as such. So, yeah, thank you so much for the report. It's good to see all the training courses that are going on as well for the staff. Thank you for that. I think Councillor James Fry had a question next. Thank you, James.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you for the report. You mentioned in your comments about illegal cigarettes. Do you also deal with it trading standards, illegal vapes? And you know that an issue which is often raised, at least by ODS and waste collection, is people who put the vapes in their waste collection bins and then create fires. Do you control the illegal vapes, which is one issue, and how are you managing to restrict people who create fires by putting these vapes into their rubbish? Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a really kind of pertinent question. So thank you. We are seeing more and more around vapes. You'll obviously be aware there was a change in the law recently, which was intended to reduce the number of single-use vapes. However, the manufacturers seem to have found a way around that by putting charging ports onto what in essence are disposable vapes. So it hasn't really had the impact we were hoping it would do. We do have a significant challenge with how people dispose of any kind of lithium-ion battery, and that's based on the challenge that they can ignite through impact. So if you put lithium-ion batteries of any sort into the waste, then we can see those challenges. We have in the county quite recently, we've had a number of waste recycling fires. And often it's hard to identify what the cause of the fire is, depending on the nature of the fire. But often it can be down to some form of lithium-ion battery. So it's a challenge we have as part of the team, as well as managing illegal cigarettes. They will also look at illegal vapes and how they manage that. it's an ongoing challenge. We haven't we haven't resolved it yet, but we are still looking at ways we can do that and understand it both locally and on the national level.
Councillor Henwood had a question.
I'm not sure this is adult services or yourself, but please guide me. So is there a high risk register of those vulnerable students in our communities that we should be aware of in upcoming heat waves and places you talked earlier of like emergency DP, I've forgotten the acronym, but places of emergency where people can go, i.e. parish councils and community centres. Is that something that we should be looking at in the future, upcoming heat waves, and knowing where those vulnerable people are?
Thank you. So I think there's
certainly the police, local police, or local PCSOs will have a record usually of those adults that are vulnerable as such, usually provided helped by local councillors, giving those names and addresses to them. But Rob, did you want to add a bit more to this?
Yes, certainly I can. So if there's two parts to that, if I can just treat them separately. So one is around emergency reception centres, I think is what we're talking about. So we have a responsibility under our joint Oxfordshire resilience team that where we have a major incident or a significant incident, where a number of people have to leave their homes, we'll put up a recovery centre to allow them to have something to stay. And we have plans to do that for most major towns in conjunction with the local areas. We can go into large public buildings, sports halls, those kind of things, to make sure we can set things up so people have got a place to go, and they'll do that based on plans and based on the situation where the incident is. So they're pretty good at doing they're very good at doing that. We have plans across the county to do that, and we get supported by all the kind of local government organisations. The vulnerable people, we are one of the, and I'm mindful of what I'm saying given where we are, given our decisions on local government organisation. One of the strengths of having a fire rescue service within the county council is that we have a fantastic relationship with our colleagues in adult social care. So we can very quickly find out the data we need in order to support those vulnerable people. So I guess the clearest example is around flooding. So we know that if we have a large scale flooding event, and as a fire rescue service, we want to make sure people are either safe in their homes, or can be safe in their homes, or to rehome them. We will prioritise that based on vulnerability. Now, we can still operate that across the local resilience forum with other organisations, dealing with police colleagues and all those. But we are very good at that. We're very good at sharing that information, and that's something we will make sure continues long into the future through that local resilience forum.
Thank you. And thank you for coming this afternoon and answering all the questions. Right, okay, one more, and then I'm going to take a 5-minute comfort break. So over to you for one more question.
Thanks, Chair. So just firstly, as what you mentioned Abingdon earlier, I'd just like to thank the fire service for coming out to Adderbury, which I obviously represent, last Friday to deal with a field fire there. I think 4 fire engines were in attendance and brought that successfully under control with no further damage. So that's really good. Thank you. I just wanted to ask, there's a specific statistic in here about electric blankets, and it's saying that there's 920 electric blankets that have been tested, of which 37% failed safety checks. Now, 37% seems to me to be very high. Do you know whether that's down to the nature of the electric blankets coming forward for testing? And the general question, I think, is whether we as a county council can do more to highlight this potential issue in households, because I think a lot of people wouldn't think about a damaged electric blanket being dangerous. I know we do highlight this, and I'm just wondering whether there's anything further we can do to avoid any incidents.
I just add to that, because you're talking about potential incidents happening because of electrical faults. I think one of the most frightening things videos I saw recently was how fast a fire took hold in a student room with regards to an illegal electric bike going up in flames. And I think that's actually more of a worry in a way than as much as electric blankets are. And it's great that we have the testing and things and the free testing. And please, I would always encourage all councillors to advertise that as much as possible. I know it's very old fashioned, but actually posters, because the elderly generation do stop at notice boards and look at posters. And if it's got the big word free and testing, they will come to that, especially as a free cup of tea, as there was in Risinghouse. We got a big turnout for that. But perhaps you just want to comment as well on the types of fires now that we're seeing. We've mentioned vapes, we've mentioned fire blankets, but I think illegal electric bikes as well are one of the worst things, and the chargers that people are using now to charge them up within their rooms or within their premises.
Thank you. And again, and thank you for raising the electric blanket testing, because it is one of our real successes. So we had to pivot quite quickly during COVID and actually created a door-to-door service. So previously we were running on fire stations, which we still do, and inviting the elderly to come in. But actually now we're able to do, we still offer it for some residents, door-to-door service. So even the people who aren't don't feel comfortable, confident, or able to come down the fire station to get it tested, they can arrange through friends, and we'll come collect them and get them tested for them, which I think is something we started during COVID, and fantastic we keep doing it, which allows us to kind of test the numbers we're talking about. We employ people as part of the programme who are qualified electricians. So a lot of the faults they're picking up are basically challenges where the electric blankets are just getting worn and tired. There is an element of people don't bring their new blankets to be tested, so we are getting the older blankets, and we do provide replacements. So again, people, the service is not only that we test it. If your blanket is faulty, we will provide you with a new, through kind of sponsorship, we will provide you with new blankets to replace that, to make sure we're not then creating a problem because the person doesn't have warmth in their home. So I think it's a fantastic initiative. We don't see that many fires through electric blankets, but they do happen. They still do happen, and they tend to be. Most people who use electric blankets tend to use what you'd expect to be kind of properly tested and qualified blankets. So we don't see that much of an issue. People tend to be pretty clear on they want to make sure their blankets, if they're sleeping on them, are of a good quality in those elements. So it's a concern. It's important we keep doing it, because if we can remove these faulty blankets from circulation and replace them with better ones, we keep kind of building year on year to make sure that we are putting as many people, reducing the risk for them. Moving on to the kind of broader question around types of fires, we are seeing the world is moving on with battery technology, which is, and to a certain extent, the actual technology is moving on as well. So we know that a lot of the new batteries being made for electric cars, electric vans, are actually being tested in a way so there is less chance of the issues of them starting fires. We talk about thermal runaway, which is the process where a bit of damage in the battery then creates it, and it basically just heats itself up and becomes really difficult to manage and put the fire out. But we are got everything in between, and that's the challenge really for us. So it's really, as you said, the lower quality batteries, the products that are made. We all know it's really easy to get products directly into the UK from other parts of the world which haven't gone through the same levels of testing, and that does create some concerns. And the concern around, in particular, e-scooters, e-bikes, for us as a fire and rescue service, is one is that they cause the fires, and we talked about that, and everyone's kind of fairly aware of those problems, and there are some captures of fairly rapid fire growths and how we deal with that. The second one, which is more of a concern to a certain extent, is actually when you just have the bike in the building and you have a normal fire, and how that can impact on how we manage the fire. So if we're going to deal with a fire in a kitchen, but the fire can then spread and then suddenly catches it, you've got an e-bike in the corridor, then actually it could be affecting the pathway out for the firefighters. And so there's those additional risks. So a lot of work's been done. We've got very clear advice on it, which again, members of the public can find on e-bike safety, but it is about making sure the first thing is to make sure that you're only using products which are properly tested and meet the standards we'd expect for this country. The second one is about making sure that you charge them preferably outside, but recognizing that can be challenging, but making sure that you're doing that properly, and understanding the wear and tear on batteries, and all of that information is available out there. It is a concern. It's not at epidemic proportions yet. It's still manageable, but we're still looking at how we deal with all of those risks around battery fires, and it goes all the way up to solar panel farms. We're seeing lots of stored battery energy, these kind of large containers with lots of batteries in them, which are supporting working out how we as a fire rescue service adapt to the risks that they pose. But we do that on a national level with lots of support from our colleagues to make sure we understand the risk, and then make sure we understand we've got the right equipment and technology to be able to deal with those challenges.
Okay, lovely, thank you. I think we'll end the conversation there. Thank you very much for the report. And the committee is recommended to note. Thank you. I think we're agreed on that. Thank you very much for coming this afternoon. We're going to stop the live stream for 5 minutes for a quick comfort break. I know we only have 2 items to go, and I'm hoping that we will get them done very, very quickly. But we have been going for 2.5 hours, and I think the 5-minute comfort break is in order. It's warm. Yes, it is. Yeah. So hopefully we should get finished quite. update to scale of election expenses, and then to look at our work programme as well for 26-27, please. Thank you. Anita, over
Just
to you.
repeat the item number for the live stream, please. We are on item
Agenda 14.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and hopefully this will be a very quick item for the committee, but it's here for transparency. So the committee will remember that you have previously approved a scale, well, not approved, but noted a scale of fees that the returning officer put in place to deal with any election events during the course of this administrative year, 2026-2027. And then with very short notice, His Majesty's Revenue and Customs came out with a change to the travelling expenses rate per mile, which has increased from 45 pence to 55 pence, which had an impact on the May 2026 elections that were being held across the county in the districts. So the returning officer was consulted and agreed to increase that the fee within the scale of fees to 55 pence. And this is to bring that for transparency to this committee so that you're aware that this has happened and that has altered from the scale of fees that you saw last time. And just to thank Lorna for bringing this to my attention, but in Annex 1, as it's being represented to you, it puts the April 26-27 fees as proposed fees, whereas they are the actual fees, because you will have seen those on the last occasion. So when it mentions the local government pay settlement, that's not this current year, that is for the previous year, which has been implemented. As you know, that's not yet been agreed at this point. So just so that you're absolutely clear, but the only thing that the committee is being asked to consider at this meeting is to note the increase in the travelling expenses fee.
So that's the mileage going up from 45 pence to 55 pence a mile, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Sorry? Noted. Thank you. I think we're being asked to note this change, please, as per the guidance released by Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. Are there any comments or questions from members? No, thank you. We can note that one, agenda item 14. Then we could move on to agenda item 15, which is the Audit and Governance Committee work programme for 26-27. There we have at the top of the page, we have the July meeting where we are now. The next meeting is in September, the 16th of September. And there is one item that we do need to add, probably as an outstanding, as a standing item, which is appointment to outside bodies, because that is something that this committee has control over. So I think we do probably need it as a standing item. There won't always be changes, but obviously changes do happen during a year. So if we just have it as a standing item.
Appointment to category B, outside bodies, category A, a responsibility of cabinet, and category C, a responsibility of Anita Bradley direct.
That's correct.
According to changes passed last year.
That's right. So just to be clear, it's category B appointments to outside bodies.
Of which there are very few, but you're right, it will be a standing item going forward. And apologies, it was missed on this work programme. That's my mistake.
Okay. Sorry, I've got three hands up now. I think I saw Councillor Rawlings first, then Councillor Hingley, and then Councillor McCaulkin. So we'll take it that way. So around the table, please.
Okay.
And Sarah too.
I just had a couple of questions for September.
Yeah.
And there's nothing on there for LGR. It would be appropriate probably by that time to do so. And the other reflection was a send update from a financial point of view. Hopefully we'll know a bit more then, but that is relevant to everything we're doing financially.
Right. So can we consider adding LGR update on that? And then Councillor Hingley. Sorry, is there something you wanted to add?
So we did both actually have LGR or something, but I think we need to be clear about what aspect we want to consider. Obviously, thinking about the remit of this committee. So
I think it's governance. I think possibly is a big
Of
thing,
the
obviously, to have-
programme across effectively
yes,
the
and also treasury management, how that will be considered across the new
Well, that's just part of the
part of the
finance.
Okay, so
Yeah, I
that
mean,
will be counted on the finances. I mean, just thinking of this committee's it's and the risk assessments obviously as well too. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Him, do you want to go help with your? Oh right, sorry, and Councillor McLaughlin. Right. Okay. Yeah.
So minutes of the meeting in March, the Director of Law and Governance Monitoring Officer agreed to consider the best way to take this forward to avoid duplication and to comply, of course, with the committee's terms of reference.
Yeah, I mean, the discussions that I've had are exactly that, that we've just reflected in this discussion, that the remit is the governance. So, as Councillor Rawlins said, governance and risk. It's also obviously September, and if it's anything around disaggregation or aggregation, whichever, we're not going to know too much in September. So just to manage expectations about it, it'll be sort of setting a framework almost of how we're going to work, as opposed to being able to come in September with any definite answers.
Yeah, yeah. But it's a sort of working towards vesting day as well too, with the shadow elections happening. Yeah, and the shadow elections obviously in May of next year too. Right. Okay, fine. Then we go on to November. Sorry.
I just add a couple of things that came
Yeah,
up from the
please do.
self-assessment.
Yeah.
So obviously, when we did the audit committee self-assessment, we identified LGR as an area. There was also a couple of areas that you as members felt it would be useful to bring back to the committee. So the first was when we were talking about how do you assure yourself on value for money in contract arrangements. And you said that you'd like an update on the commercial strategy. And I've spoken to Richard Scarlett, and he'd be more than happy to bring that to a meeting. It's just when you would like that. Would you like that sooner rather than later? I mean, I'm looking at September, and I think we could probably put it in for September. Yeah.
What do members think? Do you think we can fit all those new things in? Yeah, into September, right.
Okay, and then the other one was around Enterprise Oxfordshire.
Right.
Now, whilst there's an audit within the plan, the governance and performance framework, that we brought to you later on in the year in terms of my sort of independent assurance. But you did say that actually it'd be useful to have some update in how they manage, govern, risk, control. Again, within the remit of the committee, but how their arrangements are working.
Understanding their governance would be useful, I think. And have some reassurance over that as well. Sorry, so would that be November? Do you think that would be all right? And who would we ask to come for that?
We could have that. Lorna's just advised that would be Robin Rogers.
Sorry, it'd be
Robin Rogers.
Robin Rogers.
I'd speak to him about that. In terms of the audit, you're probably not going to get that till January.
No, but if we had some background detail, I think actually before the January audits reported to us, that would be helpful. Yeah, because it might be that we'd have some questions on that audit as well that we'd understand better by having the.
Okay, well, I'll speak to Robin and Richard Scarlett, and then I'll feed that back into Jack, and he can schedule that for us.
Is there anything members feel we ought to be putting to the audit working group at all? We've already got some things on the agenda for audit working group, haven't we? Can you remind me what they?
So in the September meeting, you've got the bridges management audit, which was red, and you've got highways contract management audit, which was amber. You'll be getting the full audit reports for those, plus officers' reports for that. Paul Firma will be in attendance for that, those items. And then in the October meeting, we are reviewing, you called back in. You help me out here, Jack. And it's gone. No, the October audit working group meeting, we've called back in an update on. No, it wasn't commercial. It was safeguarding transport, which was the red. You wanted to see the progress made. And also it was on school admissions.
That's right, school admission.
Which was also a red report.
Yeah.
So that's September and October audit working group meetings already scheduled in.
And
there is a December meeting. We haven't got anything for that yet.
No.
But it may be when I come back in September with audit reports, there may be ones that you want to
something that we want
call
to
in.
take for the December one. Right, okay, that's fine, that's good. Thank you for that update.
Are you happy with that? Do you want me to check the minutes, or are those?
No, that's fine.
Those are the ones, to my recollection,
Yeah.
that you'll be putting to the next meeting. You're right. Yeah.
Can you just check the ones that I've got that right?
I will.
It'd be useful if you've got it.
Yeah, okay. Right, I think that concludes. I don't think we need to go on looking at beyond November, because January, March, and it's looking pretty full already. But we will have some more. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming this afternoon, and for your contributions as well. And thank you to the officers. I will now close the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Sarah, I don't have the minutes to hand, but